your tracks today.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. But otherwise, how you doing?
All good here in, well, it's not so sunny right now, but in Ghana. Um,
Hectic.
so yeah, I needed a change, so I decided to switch things up again because most of my work is done online, and I
Yeah.
really miss it. So
Is
yeah.
it? Yeah. And how is it there? Like, I know, like, there's this general consensus that like South Africans are very uncomfortable when it comes to like moving to other like African countries permanently. So, how's like your experience so far?
Well, I think it kind of helps because I'm half Ghanaian, so I
Yeah.
actually do have family here.
Okay.
Um, but generally, South Africans are a little narrow-minded with regards to exploring other cultures.
Yeah.
Um, and I found it to be such a delight. And it's not the first time I've lived outside of South Africa, and every time I have, it's
Yeah.
just been everyone's been so welcoming and just so hospitable.
Yeah.
So highly, highly 10 out of 10
Yeah,
recommend.
no, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm yet to even like, I'm always like, that's so like weird. Like, I'm African, but I haven't been to another African country, which is strange. So it's something I'm definitely like exploring because, I don't think that's a good thing, to
I
be
get
in like your continent and not like kind of explore it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Lindy, tell me, your career, right? Your sexual wellness career, like how did you like get interested or where did your desire come from to kind of like pursue this kind of career?
So how it started off as a body positivity movement, if I'm being quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really initially like the way my body was. I felt very thin, and I felt like I looked like a 12-year-old boy. And one day I just started exercising as a way of dealing with a breakup.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I started, and the people that I was exercising with were like, "Yeah, you're gonna see a change in your body," and I'm like, "Listen, I'm a sportswoman.
yeah,
There's no way you're gonna change the shape of my body."
yeah,
Until they actually did. I started seeing, little, very little curves, but I wanted to prove them wrong. So I
yeah,
started documenting my journey and taking nudes, and I would call them progress nudes. Every day I
yeah,
would take a picture, and I actually started to see the difference because it's so much easier to see your body change and transform when you're not wearing clothes. Because I
yeah,
could wear the same thing, and 3 weeks later, I could be different shape and it will look different on me. So I
yeah,
wanted to see it quite raw and as authentic as possible. So I decided to take pictures naked. And one
yeah,
day, I am a rebel at heart. One day, I posted one of them on Twitter, and it was just a silhouette. People couldn't really see it was me, and I got
yeah,
so many compliments and so many people saying, "Who's the model? This picture's beautiful," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's yeah." And
yeah,
the things that compliments do for you, they definitely boost your self-esteem.
yeah,
And the
definitely,
more
yeah,
I put it out there, the more I realized actually I'm not the only one who feels the same way. And because I was able to make myself feel that vulnerable, a whole bunch of people decided to come into my DMs and ask if they could send me their nudes. And it wasn't
hectic,
only women, it was also men. And
yeah,
all we really want is just for someone to tell you that you look good, for someone to
yeah, yeah,
notice something about you, that you wouldn't necessarily have noticed about yourself. And I would go as far as, looking for something very peculiar or very abstract to compliment them on. So I would
yeah,
say, "Oh my gosh, your porcelain skin looks so amazing against your dark areola." And you're
yeah,
like, "What? That's just a nipple, you know?" But
yeah,
someone who didn't necessarily like her skin tone completely changed her perception of the way she viewed herself. And I
yeah,
realized, okay, there's people out there who just need a bit of a confidence boost. So I started pushing the envelope, going against the status quo, posting a lot more. And in that, I also realized that I was quite vocal in talking about my own personal experiences from a
yeah,
sexual perspective. And as a result, a lot more people again started coming to me with their questions and saying, "Hey, I'd like to do this with my boyfriend, but he's just no, he's not necessarily keen. How do I ask him? How do I convince him?" And I realized actually there's quite a need for people who don't actually have the resources for particular
Yeah.
information. And not only that, I was facing so much in my adult life that I was just like, I've been to private schools my whole life. I feel like I've had top notch education. Why is there
Yeah.
a gap? Why is it that I still don't have the answers? And if I don't have the answers, then it probably means that majority of the South Africans don't have the answers too. So I
Yeah.
was like, how do I start to bridge this gap? And that's when I came up with my YouTube channel. And I figured I wanted to talk about things that were somewhat deemed taboo and
Yeah.
stigmatized, but give it from an experiential point of view, but also an informative educational point of view. So I
Yeah.
used my international relations degree, and I studied and studied and studied using the skills that I acquired from that degree, which was research. And I
Yeah.
researched on topics that were of interest to me and others, and then
Yeah.
relayed the information back. And that obviously opened up a complete new door, because then I had couples coming to me. I had people who were older than me wanting
Yeah.
actual, medical advice. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not a medical practitioner. How do I even give
Yeah.
myself the credibility that is required to assist these people? And then I did my coaching course. I graduated
Yeah.
last year. And from there, obviously, my focus was sexual wellness, because I really believe that sex is not just physical, it is emotional, psychological, definitely mental. And I realized that a lot of people wanted to learn more. Not only that, they wanted help. So
Mm.
that's kind of how I became a sexual wellness coach. I was obviously practicing before I got the certification, but
Yeah.
just I needed that credibility that would give me a bit of a push, so that when I create this brand, which is Lindy R, and when I go to government and government institutions and NGOs and people that I really want to work with when it comes to schools and educating people from the grassroots, I
Yeah.
needed to I needed to be a big brand. I needed for them to know, okay, this is someone that people already look to. And
Yeah.
that's how I got here.
Yeah. Now that's really interesting. And do you think, like, obviously you touched on oh, sorry, body positivity, right? Do you think that you actually like going through your own journey and like kind of navigating through like your insecurities and stuff made it like more organic when you started like
100
communicating with people and giving them advice like based on personal experience?
100%. And that's not only with the body positivity. Like I said, everything on my YouTube channel is experiential. I don't speak on something I haven't necessarily experienced in some form.
Yeah.
So I give that authenticity, and that's where the relatability comes in. And I feel like that's where people are more drawn to speaking to me than they would be a health practitioner, or because the information is on the internet. It's
Yeah.
all there
Yeah.
for your disposal, but it's also the way it's packaged, the way it's
Yeah.
presented, and the reference at which it comes from. So when I give my examples, I say, hey, this is what happened to me when I had a threesome, and
Yeah.
people are like, whoa, okay, well, you must be speaking, about what you really know, because it's something that you've experienced.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely authenticity. And that even goes with my OnlyFans. When I post things on OnlyFans, I'm not giving you a different persona. What you
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
is a different part of Lindy R. And
Yeah.
I think people actually like are drawn to that and relate to that from a perspective of, sometimes it's fake, sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
people
Yeah.
are putting it on. But if you are able to see me on all social media platforms and there's not really much of a difference, it's just a different aspect of who I am, then you're more inclined to believe it and to enjoy it, because it
Yeah.
feels more
Yeah.
it feels like I'm the girl next door, as opposed to this abstract person that's just so far-fetched to reach. So
Yeah.
definitely authenticity plays a very big role in everything that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And do you think like basically like what are the common things that people actually like approach you about? Because obviously we are like exposed to a lot of nudity. People are more comfortable with naked bodies, in our generation. But there's still a bit of a question mark around like actually having conversations around sex. So like what are the common things that people actually come to you to seek advice about?
Sure. It depends. Couples come to me a lot, mostly to kind of understand how to communicate with one another in order to enhance their experience in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of women come to me from a sexual trauma point of view, and being able to reintegrate themselves into society.
Yeah.
It's not easy, like being able to have sex again once you've been sexually abused, and just the
Yeah.
psychological impact that it has. Men, individuals, come to me for they come for erectile dysfunction, premature
Yeah.
ejaculation, enlargement or enhancements of the penis. And then women come to me from an individual point of view from about, how to reach orgasm, how to play with themselves, toys, masturbation, etc. And then again, introducing toys into the bedroom. So I
Yeah.
deal with a whole array of things, the different aspects. I deal with, and you know what I've realized? It's so unfortunate that Black people in particular, who are my main target, don't necessarily have the resources to invest in their mental well being as much as their other counterparts.
Yeah.
You're trying to think about putting food on the table, but at the same time, you're dealing with a sexual trauma, and it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
not something you can choose between. Obviously, food comes first. So
Yeah.
for me, I don't necessarily always charge people,
Yeah.
depending on the gravity of the situation. For example, there was a gentleman who came into my DMs, and he wasn't necessarily even from South Africa. And he told me
Yeah.
that he was teaching his sister how to have sex. And at first, I just took it as, oh, okay, you want to inform her. But he was actually physically engaging with his very, very underage young sister, and was so sure that he was doing the correct thing because it's better that she was learning it from him as opposed to outside. And
Yeah.
it just goes to show that the problems with regards to sex and how sex is just a taboo is not only within Africa, it's not only within South Africa, it's actually all
Yeah.
over the world. People are not being given the right information and the right resources to handle and deal and engage with others appropriately. And that's because everybody has stigmatized so much to do with sex. But the fact
Yeah.
that someone from Honduras could come into my DMs and be like, hey, I would like some more assistance. Part of me made me realize, okay, that this is bigger than me. This is bigger than just the region in which I think it is. And hence
Yeah.
why I'm in Ghana, because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
South Africa is a little bit more progressive in the sexual world, but
Yeah.
West Africa is very, very conservative,
Yeah.
especially also the Islamic community. So as a result, people are still not necessarily engaging confidently, nor are they even seeking that information. And you get 23, 24 year olds who haven't necessarily had sex, but when their friends are having sex, they're saying, oh, she's so into it, when she closes her eyes, you just come in, and you're like, and they're laughing about it, but they actually don't know. It's not that they are abusers, it's that they haven't necessarily also been given the resources to know right from wrong, because
Yeah.
no one speaks on it. And these are sometimes things that you hear or see on television, but you don't actually have the right information to back certain things up. So
Yeah.
I realized that it wasn't just within SA, but like the amount of things that I get varies. It's actually quite crazy. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
not even physical; it's more psychological, if anything. And yeah, that's kind of what I deal with.
Yeah. And speaking on like the psychological aspect of sex, right? So obviously, different couples and different people like do different things and explore sex in different ways. So do you ever get people that come to you and speak to you about like what the boundaries are in terms of like their exploration of sex?
I get people who want to explore more than what they've already done. So not
Mm,
necessarily that they have boundaries or limitations, it's that they want to go beyond those.
yeah.
And a lot of people have shame attached to it, shame
Mm,
attached to stigmas around fantasies, around sexual desire, around the porn that you would search for, and everyone
yeah.
keeps that to themselves. But sometimes you just want an outlet where someone understands and someone's not going to judge you, and you can speak freely and engage and just be like, am I normal? Like, is
Yeah.
it okay for me to be thinking this way? And That's literally what I kind of like deal with from a general perspective. I always say that your fantasies and your desires are perfectly okay, provided they are not harming the next person, provided they are
Yeah.
not engaging with or to do with someone who cannot give their consent, so especially somebody who is underage, and if it is an animal. I really
Yeah.
don't believe that animals have the autonomy to say, "Hey, I would like to get involved in this." So therefore,
Yeah.
it's an abuse of power. So if it doesn't fit into one of those three criteria, then there's nothing wrong with it. Like the mind is such a crazy um, world of information. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like for example, there was an episode on Netflix, Sex Explained, that literally covers fantasies and the
Yeah.
amount of people in the world that like group sex. And you start to think, okay, so maybe having a threesome or the desire to have a threesome isn't so bad because you're not
Yeah.
alone. Sometimes you just need to know that you're not alone in the thought process or the ways in which you think, to kind of make you feel a little bit more comfortable to explore more of it, and therefore also
Yeah.
go about it the right way. So it's not too narrow with regards to what people ask. It's generally the same thing, like how do I explore this particular fantasy, or am I normal for thinking this way? How do I introduce this to my partner? And then we kind of
Mhm.
work from there.
Yeah. That's interesting. And the other day I was like watching your YouTube, and I saw this video where you're having a conversation with your mother, right? Surrounding sex and stuff like that. How did you get to that like level of comfortability? It was kind of like an eye opener, because like obviously like it's very weird, or people find it weird to have these conversations with their parents because it's kind of like, it's something that people don't even really think about. So like, how did you guys actually like develop, that kind of comfort to actually be open and honest and have these kind of conversations, even though it is mother and daughter, which most people would say is weird or strange,
Um,
but like,
all
how did
right.
you?
I've been very privileged to come from quite an open home.
Yeah.
As much as my parents are African, their upbringing is not within the African diaspora. So they're
Yeah.
quite open to conversating, and absolutely everything that I have ever experienced, I've gone to my parents with first, because
Yeah.
that's how we've been raised. We've been taught, okay, it's okay if you're starting to want to know about sex, because rather come to us so we can give you the right information. And
Yeah.
as a result, we've cultivated this relationship where we can trust one another. And I can feel like even if you might not necessarily like the way in which I'm thinking or going about something, it's something that can be open to discussion. So,
Yeah.
for example, I am polyamorous, and my mom is like, there's no way we have raised you, given you the perfect example as to, how a loving monogamous home is, and then you choose to stray in the opposite direction. How is that
Yeah.
possible? All your
Yeah.
siblings aren't like that, so where did we go wrong with you? And then I have to start thinking, okay, how did you go wrong? How is
Yeah.
it that my preference and the ways in which I have somewhat taken a certain direction is a reflection on you going wrong as a parent? And we'll have those conversations. We'll
Yeah.
engage. They don't necessarily understand everything, nor do they
Yeah.
agree with everything. But the opportunity for us to engage in that conversation definitely makes it easier to speak on, and it also makes it easier for from a perspective of support. When I
Yeah.
am talking about OnlyFans, when I was posting my nudes, obviously no parent wants to know that their child is engaging in sex work,
Yeah.
because why? We've given you all the education in the world and the resources, so why would you need to take that route? But they don't even know the empowerment aspect. And then I started to explain, okay, no, this is from an empowerment point of view. This is how I make people feel. This is in return the feedback that I get as a result of my work. And as much as they would prefer that it comes from a different perspective, they're still quite supportive in the sense that, sometimes my dad will send me an article to read on how to
Yeah.
speak to a small child. And, he'll say, I sent you something about sex and religion. And it's not to try and like throw religion down my throat, but it's also to try and, make me not feel so bad at the fact that I'm speaking on certain topics, but I'm still a Christian, I'm
Yeah.
still,
Yeah. Yeah.
very, very supportive. And my mom is like my best friend. So
Yeah.
I guess that kind of made things easier. But with regards to that particular episode, I told her it was going to get a bit saucy. I told her, I said, I hope
Yeah.
you are, quite aware that my followers can get a bit like Buck. So she was
Yeah.
very prepared. But at the same time, she also believes in the importance of authenticity, because she's a married woman who still engages in sex with my father and
Yeah.
enjoys it. How do you maintain that? Realistically, it comes from communication, it comes from exploration, it comes from, all the
Yeah.
tools you need to have a successful marriage. My parents, I believe, have it because of how open they are to exploring. So
Yeah.
I feel like, they also show the reality of what should be in a healthy environment, and they
Mhm.
understand that it's important for you to share that, because a lot of people aren't experiencing the kind of marriage that they have.
Yeah.
They also do. I get my coaching background, I guess, from my parents. My parents are both coaches. My mom's a life coach, my dad's a business coach. And they also understand the gravity in which people, even married couples in the church, are just not engaging in healthy ways of, cultivating a relationship that is successful from all aspects. So when speaking from a mother-daughter perspective, they also know, okay, putting this out there will maybe encourage people not necessarily to try and establish that relationship with their parents, but when you have your child, what is the importance of cultivating that kind of relationship with your child? As you can
Yeah.
see, this is how I have been raised, and this is what has been produced. So what kind of relationship do you want with your child? How do you want your child to think? Do you want them to be open? Do you want them to come to you first? Do you want to be able to give them the right information? And if that is the case, then use us as an example. And I guess that's kind of just why we put our stuff out there like that.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And do you think like parents should be more open to having these conversations with their kids? Obviously, you touched on in a healthy manner, obviously. You touched on the guy from Honduras that
Mm,
DM'd you,
yeah,
you touched on that
yeah.
situation. But what I mean is like in a healthy, positive way, do you think they should be more open to having these conversations with their kids without being uncomfortable?
100%. I mean, I've got a rape support group with
Yeah.
actual adults, and the women are not able to tell their mothers that they have been sexually abused in some way or another, because they know that it's going to come with judgment, or they know that they're going to potentially be blamed. And we can't only blame the men in particular circumstances when it comes to the ways in which women view themselves. Women play a big
Mhm.
role too. So
Yeah.
it definitely is something that needs to be looked at from all aspects, from all perspectives. But you need to start to have that healthy relationship with your parents so that you feel safe. Like, if you can't go to your parents for a level of comfort and safety, who can you actually go to? This is
Yeah.
someone who's birthed you, who's brought you into the world, but that's also the same person who has, sorry, my apologies, but
No
that's also the
problem.
same person who is now judging you and making you feel less than.
Yeah.
So I think it's extremely important to be able to cultivate a relationship with your parents, but at the same time, how you are raised can bring fear into that.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you come from a very strict home, but sometimes you also have to realize that sometimes they don't even know how to speak to you about it, because that's
Mhm.
how they were raised, and you have to be the one to kind of break that chain. So
Yeah.
push the envelope, go against the status quo, test the waters just a little bit, and say, Mom, I'm going to university and I'm speaking to a boy.
Yeah.
And just small things, like take it step by step. It doesn't obviously have to be like, hey ma, how do we correctly do anal, because I don't even take it that far.
Yeah.
But like, if you know how to slowly introduce conversation and being able to comfortably have conversations with your parents, and also sometimes come from it from a point of needing advice. All parents need to love to feel needed. All parents
Yeah.
love to feel like, they've got all the answers to everything. Even if you've already done your research and you know what your opinion is, just to be able to open up conversation, say, hey, mom, I'm being spoken to by this gentleman, and I really
Yeah.
would like to know how you dealt with it when you were in university. I'm feeling
Mm.
like a little like this or a little like that, and I actually like the attention. Is this normal? And then your mom can literally be like, no, you need to focus on school. But when I was in university, this is what I did,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
literally, it's just a matter of making them feel needed and wanted. And the information that you bring to them needs to kind of push the boundaries a little so that you can start to open that conversation up. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be boom in your face throwing hardcore information, but start to see where the gaps, and that you can kind of like steadily go into a certain direction of communication.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously like romantic relationships and family relationships, the dynamics are obviously different, but um the vital thing is communication. So do you feel as if like when it comes to like your romantic relationships, right, with people, do you feel as if you what?
I feel as if I'm able to communicate better.
No, no, no. What I'm asking is like, do you
Um,
feel as if you almost have to kind of like tone yourself down or basically like be attentive in terms of like how you engage with your partner? Because obviously like this is your profession, right? So
yeah,
someone, your partner might feel as if, okay, like you know everything, whatever the case may be. Like you have to like basically keep tabs on that and be careful
I
and
do.
have boundaries.
I do. I do. There's so, and what, like the more I learn, the more I wish I didn't know, because
Yeah,
sometimes ignorance is bliss. And I will get into, an engagement with a gentleman, and I'll just be like, I can see right through you. I know exactly what you're doing. I know exactly what you're saying, but I also don't want to like give it away and give it off, because then it comes across as arrogant. It comes
yeah,
across
yeah,
as,
yeah,
oh, that's actually not what I was going to do, but okay. And you just let it unfold, and but for me it's kind of like knowledge is power. I do
yeah,
know a
yeah,
lot, and but I don't throw it in your face how much I know, but I definitely do use that as a way of gauging as to whether this will ever work.
yeah,
But at the same time, I think that's a bit of a problem, because now there's a lack of communication on my part.
yeah,
I because I realize that this is the way you think and you're a bit of a chauvinist or whatever, then I would rather just keep quiet and like move on to the next. Whereas
mm,
with other instances, you fight to learn, you
yeah,
engage and experience to learn. And I kind of am just like, I'm not even going to bother here. I'm a 30-year-old woman. I don't have time for this. Where's the next
yeah,
gentleman? That's not
mm,
necessarily teaching the person who I'm engaging with. But at
yeah,
the same time, I have to now think, okay, is this a journey I want to do? Every single relationship that I'm in, do I want to be the teacher? Sometimes I
yeah,
just want someone who is not even if they're on my level, but just again being open to engaging in a healthy manner, so that I feel like you're allowing me to. If I'm feeling unwanted, I need to be able to say it. I need to be able to say it without your ego getting involved, and
yeah,
without you being like, no, that's not the case, blah, blah, blah. I need you to make me feel safe. I need you to reassure me. But I can also see when you're bullshitting me. So
yeah,
it's just like it's a double-edged sword.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
it's not the best way to engage or deal with things, but I think that's partly why I'm also single,
yeah,
because it's very hard to find someone who who isn't trying to one up me
yeah,
based on the fact that I am a sexual wellness coach. And on top of that, they think that they're going to expect fireworks if they're with me, and I'm like, I'm still
yeah,
human,
yeah,
like there's
yeah,
still a lot that I also have to learn, even about myself. So I'm not like this sex freak who's going to come and give you the rounds of your life. If anything, I
yeah,
probably don't enjoy sex that much. So, which is disappointing to a lot of people, because there's been
yeah,
times where I'm like, maybe I'm asexual. Like, there's no way I'm okay with just not ever having sex. And that's exactly
yeah,
what it is. I don't have
mm,
to. I can engage in intimacy and we can talk and we can chat, but it isn't necessarily the physical that I'm going after. But everyone sees, oh, Lindy R, sexual wellness coach, OnlyFans content creator. She must be a freak. And it's far
yeah,
from it. They get
mm,
disappointed, or they're very pushy and all they want is sex. So it's a bit tricky.
Yeah.
like managing relationships, being with the career that I have. But I'm sure God has got me at some point.
Yeah. Nah, always, always. He's always on time.
Yes.
But yeah, it's interesting that you touched on that because I was actually gonna ask how you deal with people kind of like fetishizing you or like having these stigmas that like, oh, okay, because this is your profession, the sex is gonna be amazing. Or hey, let me slide into this girl's DMs
Yeah.
because I've got a type of like expectation from this. Like how do you actually deal with that mentally?
Um, it it takes a mental, psychological, emotional toll on me to
Mm,
constantly be sexualized, even when I'm not trying to be. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, I understand when I am putting content out there for OnlyFans, the goal is for you to sexualize me. The goal
yeah,
is for you to want to spend money on how sexy I look or how sexy I feel. But when it comes to just wanting a real, authentic engagement with someone, I never know. I never really know. Sometimes
yeah,
people will push it to quite, a far point where they're eventually like, oh, yeah, we finally got you. Let's go for dinner. And then once the
yeah,
dinner happens, it's like, okay, but aren't we going to have sex? And I'm just
yeah,
like, at least fake it a little bit, at
yeah,
least
yeah, yeah.
me a bit. At least try and jute me into thinking that that's not all you want. But
Mm,
unfortunately, that it kind of comes with the territory. And I feel like, I stopped telling people that I'm a sexual wellness coach.
yeah,
Even from the airport, when you're writing down, you're filling in forms and you're saying what's your career or what's your profession, I just say wellness coach.
yeah,
It's less questions, it's um, less like eyes, less judgment.
yeah,
And it's unfortunate that I still have to, we're in a world where I have to kind of hide what I do just to alleviate some of the pressure that comes with it. But yeah, I've realized that I get sexualized a lot, very
yeah,
often, not only by men, um, by women too.
yeah,
And I'm seen as a threat to women and seen as a fetish to men.
yeah,
So it's kind of just like, okay, let me not say anything at all. Let me just be
yeah,
this eccentric girl who likes to talk about sex.
yeah,
But the moment one person finds out, it's, oh my gosh, do you know what she does? Oh my gosh, do you know what she does? And then people have a sudden peak of interest and like, hey, so we should
yeah,
chill. We should go out. And I'm just like, oh, why can't you just take me for me? Love me for me, you know?
yeah,
Like, me a chance. Like my personality is way more bomb than my profession, I promise you.
yeah,
So yeah, it's not easy, but again, like you said, God is always on time, and I believe that through being authentic, I will find someone who kind of aligns with the work that I do and
yeah,
understands the kind of work that I do, but doesn't like push in a negative way. They kind of help me grow and
mm,
like
mm,
empower me. So that's
yeah,
literally what I'm looking for.
yeah. Now you'll find it. You'll let me know when you do, but I believe you
I
definitely
got
will.
you.
Yeah. And you say like women see you as a threat, right? Um, do you think like if there is somebody out there, let's say there are genuine people out there that are trying to pursue you, right? Have you ever experienced like a level of intimidation? Like, do you think people are intimidated to approach you because of your profession?
Yeah,
Let's just say like
definitely.
from a genuine perspective, like not trying to sexualize you, not trying to do anything, just trying to get to know you, whatever the case may be. Like, do you think people are
Mhm.
intimidated to
I
pursue
think
you because of your profession?
definitely. I think they're intimidated more so when they actually like see me in lives or interviews and they realize, oh wait, no, it's not just a physical sexual wellness coach. Like she actually has knowledge. And a lot of men don't want to
Yeah,
feel emasculated or made to feel small with lack of knowledge in comparison to me. So then they just don't bother. And I've realized that only because I'll start to have a conversation with someone and they'll be like, whoa, I didn't even think you would speak to me. And I'm like, why?
yeah,
Why would I not speak to you? Like, no, because you have this and you think this way and you're so this. And I'm just
yeah,
like, I'm still human. Like, I have gone
yeah,
and I study things and I don't know everything. Again, I am not a health professional. I am
yeah,
literally someone who helps others change their behavior to engage in
Yeah.
healthier ways of having sex and like, engaging. So
Mm.
I realize a lot of people actually are just like, no, I'd rather not even bother taking the risk because if I do, then I could potentially get rejected. And they're right to think so because
Yeah.
everyone that comes into my DMs, if someone just says hi, I'm straight to the point. How may I assist you? If you would like to make a booking, please go into my website. And sometimes that's how people meet. They meet in the DMs and it's just through
Yeah.
banter and conversation. But because I've
Mm.
just been constantly just sexualized from the get go, I don't even give people a chance anymore. I'm literally
Yeah.
just like, what is it that you want from me? State what you want. I also don't do small talk in the DMs because the moment I do small talk, it's a thing of, okay, I want to take you to dinner. And then when you take me to dinner, you're just trying to have sex. So I want to meet people organically. I want to meet people in the same kinds of spaces as me. But that doesn't happen in Africa. It
Mm.
doesn't happen.
Mm.
Like, and even though South Africa is a little bit more open and diverse, they are definitely not. They're still traditional. The black South
Yeah.
African man still just wants his woman to be a certain way, and that's how all
Yeah.
African men are too. But white men are not my preference, but that's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
where I'd get more grace or more understanding with regards to the type of person I am and the job that I do, because they're open to thinking like that naturally without being prompted, without being, taught to be a certain way. And
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, maybe I need to go to Europe or the States and look for a black man that has necessarily grown up there, even though they won't necessarily have the traditional cultural upbringing that a lot of Africans have. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like, yeah, I understand why people would be intimidated. I understand why it would be hard for people to come into my DMs. Heck, I wouldn't. I definitely
Yeah.
wouldn't. You look at
Yeah.
someone and you're like, I'm not trying to test that. I'm not trying to, ask certain questions and then get schooled. But it's definitely an ego thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you say like are the barriers to sexual wellness and having a well balanced sex life?
Um, hmm. I would say finding finding the right sexual partner that understands you.
Yeah.
Like I said, sometimes I wish I was still ignorant. Sometimes I wish
Mm.
there was just a lot of information I didn't know. And in wanting to find the right person, you have to go through the wrong person, which
Yeah.
means I have a lot of people who I have engaged with, but they haven't been the perfect fit. So now I'm just
Mm.
like, I can't just be going around having sex with everyone. I can't
Yeah.
just be going around trying to get into relationships with everyone and hope that this person's going to be the right fit eventually. So I've kind of like just taken a let's just stop, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sexually, but I want to find someone who I can engage with from a mental point of view, where if you can challenge me and in me challenging you, you embrace that challenge, then we can work because then it
Yeah.
means that we can grow together. But the
Yeah.
moment you feel challenged and you're just like, nah, I'm out of here, I'm done. And I'm just like, okay, typical. So I kind of have stopped the whole casual sex or wanting to engage sexually with people and kind of
Yeah.
just forcing the mental engagement and like understanding of one another to see if sexually we would be compatible, and
Yeah.
most of the time we aren't. Most of the
Yeah.
time we aren't, so then it's like, okay, on to the next, but then it's still a whole bunch of guys that I'm speaking to, a whole bunch of men that I am, engaging mentally with from a, flirting, like almost like, psychologically type of view. And I'm just like, okay, I'm talking to absolutely everyone. I don't actually have that one person who I can
Yeah.
just say, yeah, that's my guy. And it gets boring. It gets so boring. It gets like tedious. And then you have a whole bunch of guys in your DMs and you're like, oh, damn it, I started this conversation. I was the one who
Yeah.
wanted to see if you fit, but now you're here. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, do I, and some I just give feedback. I literally I'm really, really good at giving feedback. I will tell you exactly why I no longer want to engage. I will tell you
Yeah.
exactly why. we will never have sex again.
Yeah.
Purely based on the fact that if I call myself an educator, how am I not educating you for the next person? What
Mm,
I'm telling
mm.
you could potentially be helping you. It could be something you absolutely have no idea about. So as
Yeah.
a result, you could be doing the exact same thing to the next female. So let
Yeah.
me give you the information from my perspective. Just and if it's something you don't ever want to change, that's also okay. But let at least be something that you think about. Let's open up your mind to the possibility so that you
Yeah.
can be better.
Yeah. And when do you think those type of conversations should be initiated, especially if you're starting a new relationship with regards to like, what you're willing to explore, what the boundaries are, what you're comfortable with? When do you think people should start having
Mm,
those kind of conversations?
the earlier the better. I'm quite the shock factor type person. I'll
Yeah.
ask you on the first date, have you ever done anal? I'm like the
Mm-hmm.
type of person who will be like, let's actually get this out of the way to establish if this is ever, even going anywhere.
Yeah.
And if just questions or conversations scare you away, then you're definitely not the person who I should be engaging with anyway. But I
Yeah.
do understand that sometimes it's hard to ask those certain kinds of questions. So I will always suggest that, and it's silly, but I always suggest that you do it from someone else's perspective. Hey, babe, oh my gosh, I saw someone on Twitter talking about the fact that they actually enjoy threesomes. And I was just like, it got me thinking, is that something you'd be interested in? And
Yeah.
that's not you saying or admitting that that is something you'd like, but it's something that you're bringing to their attention and you're able to gauge from their reaction and the conversation that you have with them based on other people doing it because there's always less people who don't hold back when it comes to other people. It's so easy to judge the next person, but when it comes
Yeah.
to your partner, you don't want to say things that could potentially scare them away or make them feel some type of way, but you want the authenticity of their answer. So
Yeah.
always give it someone else's perspective. Always just be like, oh my gosh, I watched this girl. Like a lot of guys ask me, how do I get my girlfriend to be engaged in this? I say, tell them you found me on Twitter and watch my YouTube channel together.
Yeah.
Like, watch those episodes and be like, yo, 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 babe, I wouldn't do that. Oh my gosh, babe, would you do that? Let's try that. And it
Yeah.
literally just is a way to open conversation so that you can see what levels they're at. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going to know everybody off the bat, but you're also
Yeah.
not going to know what they will or won't do if unless they're faced with certain prospects. So
Yeah.
if you are not trying to just sneak it in there, it can be very hard to full on come out and be like, hey, this is what I like, are you willing? Because
Yeah.
sometimes they might not be willing at the beginning, but with research and engagement and maybe watching porn together, that might be something that could potentially change their mind. It might be something that they
Yeah.
didn't know they even liked or were interested in. But it
Yeah.
always takes a way of being smart in how you approach the situation. So I always tell people, like, sneak it in there, use someone else, or, which is a really, really bad way of doing it, what I used to do is I used to like drink and pretend to be drunk and then be like, oh my gosh, I want to try this. Da, 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 da. And then the next day when it's feedback time, they'll be like, do you know what you were doing yesterday? I'll be like,
Yeah.
no, what? Why? What was I doing? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it was so nice. I did it when I like when you did this and da, da, da. And you don't have to ever admit that you weren't drunk, but at
Yeah.
least you have the information as to whether they liked it, and they also kind of just blame it on the alcohol.
Yeah.
So if it is something that they didn't like, they'll just be like, hi, baby, don't do that one again. And you'll be like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, sorry, I was obviously so drunk. And you leave it
Yeah.
at that. So,
Mm.
yeah, I have a few tricks.
No, that's smart. That's smart. Um, and like anything in life, obviously, like with anything, if you want anything to work, obviously you have to put in the effort, right? Do you think as a society we need to be more realistic in terms of our effort towards like having a well balanced sexual life with our partners? Because I feel like
Yeah,
that's something that people don't think about like often, you know?
at all. They don't think about it at all. Sex is just it's unfortunate that sex has been dumbed down to a procreation or pleasure for the man and not
Yeah.
necessarily like how much and the kinds of pleasure you can have, and for the woman too. But I think besides being realistic, we have to be intentional.
Yeah.
with intentionality comes a lot of self awareness. And that requires you knowing exactly what it is that you like, you knowing exactly what it is that you want to do, um, and being able to communicate it. I have my workshop coming up on the 27th, and that is literally what it's about. It is
Yeah.
about being able to identify processes and being able to communicate them accordingly to your partner or to whoever you're engaging with, so that you can reach your full maximum potential in terms of pleasure, and so that you are engaging with the right kinds of people who can help you reach that.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be intentional and understand that sex is not just physical. It is definitely psychological. It
Yeah.
definitely requires a lot more work than just, wearing a condom and putting it in.
Mm.
It's about understanding, it's about communication. And if you are able to establish how to have a healthy sex life, I can almost guarantee that other areas of your life are also successful, because
Yeah.
sex is it's not an easy topic to just deal with. You know,
Mm.
the communication, if you can communicate in the bedroom, best believe you're able to communicate with your boss and say, I actually didn't like the way in which you did that because one, two, three, four, without
Yeah.
necessarily coming across as rude or, disobedient or whatever it may be. So all the different ways and tools that you guard yourself with from a sexual perspective can definitely be used in other areas of your life. And as a
Yeah.
result, we have to be more intentional in wanting to get that information, in wanting to
Mm.
learn more about ourselves so that we are healthier holistically, not
Yeah.
just sexually.
Yeah. And do you find that ineffective communication when it comes to sex in relationships reflects in other areas of relationships as well, from a
Definitely.
negative perspective?
Definitely, 100%. If you can't tell your partner who you are your most vulnerable and intimate with, the things that you like and do not like, chances are you can't tell someone of authority. Chances are
Mm.
you can't tell someone who you believe has more power over you, or more knowledge over you. So
Yeah.
it definitely affects the way you communicate. And like I said, I'd like to believe that communicating sexually from a sexual perspective is one of the hardest ways of communicating.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the toughest ways. So if you can master that, you can apply those skills and those tools to other ways and other forms of communication with different people.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that's interesting. And just to close off, I'd just like to touch on pornography for a second. So obviously nowadays, like pornography is like very easily accessible. I mean, you can just go on Twitter even, it's very easily accessible.
Hmm.
It's out there. It's not hard to find. So do you think with it being so easily accessible, do you think that's desensitizing us to sex? And do you think it's gonna make these conversations harder to have, like going forward in the future?
Ooh, what
The
an
more
interesting
accessible,
question.
the more accessible
Do
it
I
is, do you think?
Not necessarily, but I do think it's contributing towards the sexual abuse that people are experiencing,
Mm,
purely based on the fact that you feel that it's so accessible. So as a result, you just want to take it,
yeah,
and you're not necessarily going the route of wanting to work for it or to kind of like um, court someone into actually wanting to have sex with you. So I
yeah,
think, watching a lot of porn and the different types of porn that there is definitely making people want access to it more, if anything, not
yeah,
necessarily desensitizing it, just wanting access to it more and wanting different types of sex more. Because, and that's why you'll find, men who will be in relationships and will have a certain type of sex with their wives or their girlfriends, but the moment they're cheating, their fantasy selves are coming out. And you're just like, but you can actually engage with your partner in this way. But because
yeah,
you are watching porn, and porn, there's also a lot of shame attached to the certain kinds of porn that you're researching,
yeah,
naturally you're not going to want to inflict that on your partner. So you're going to look for the next girl, you're going to find the girl at the club, and that's the person who you're going to be like, hey, I want to do anal, or hey, I want to double penetrate, or whatever it is. And
mm,
that's where you'll start to test the waters more, but it's still around a taboo, it's still around a stigma. So I think porn hasn't necessarily desensitized us. It's just made us want access to it and more different types. People
Mm,
wanting more. Even women, we. I, I think maybe for women it's slightly desensitized you because a lot of women who I deal with are so focused on masturbation. It's like they don't even want to
mm,
give me the opportunity anymore. Like,
yeah,
you're probably never gonna get me there anyway. So I'm just gonna go and search for my porn and play with my toy, and that's where I'm going to get my satisfaction. So maybe
yeah,
it's eradicated the whole two parties involved in order for you to reach that pleasure.
yeah,
But I don't think it's desensitized us to wanting sex at all.
yeah. Okay. Now, Lindy, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I actually learned quite a bit, actually. Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. And just before you go, can you just tell the listeners where they can find you, like on social media? You spoke about your workshop as well. Is there anything else that you have lined up that the listeners, need to know about?
Okay, so I have my workshop, yes, on the 27th of June. I'm not sure when this podcast will come out,
Yeah.
but people can generally reach me on my website, lindyr.org.za, or all social media platforms, which is lindy_r.
Okay.
And I do retreats. What I've realized is that people want to learn about sex in fun ways. They want to, engage in interesting and creative ways of learning and understanding themselves.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't, then they would easily just go on the internet and get that information.
Yeah.
But they actually want fun ways to engage in it. So I do workshops, I do retreats, I do couples retreats, I do individuals retreats where you're just kind of wanting to find yourself as well. And
Yeah.
as a result, like I've had a lot more people wanting me to do like parties and bridal showers and girls nights and birthday parties and all of that. So I
Yeah.
feel like if people are willing to just kind of get that kind of information, then I'm definitely your go-to girl. But I also just do the serious stuff where if you really really need help from a sexual perspective, you
Yeah.
know where to find me. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's